the human man lived alone on the edge of a forgotten star station. He fixed ships, cleaned parts, and talked to no one unless he had to. His days were quiet, and that's how he liked them. But that changed the day she arrived. She was small. Not even up to his shoulder, her skin was pale blue with light purple patterns, and her eyes were too big for her face. She had sharp little teeth and a voice full of attitude. "Is this the place?" she said, hands on her hips. "It looks as dead as your face." He raised an eyebrow, but didn't reply. She was part of the new interspecies exchange program, a trial, they said. To see if humans and alien species could work together, he had. Not signed up, but command assigned her anyway. Her name was Rilke, but she told him, "Just call me the best thing that's ever happened to this trash heap." She said it with a smirk. Flicking her thin tail like it was a joke, he handed her a wrench and pointed to the broken drone on the table. "Fix this," he said. "And don't blow it up," she snorted. "Please, I could fix this with my claws." But 10 minutes later, the drone sparked in her hands. She yelped and dropped it, then quickly laughed. "Just testing the limits." He said nothing, but he was watching her closely. All day she talked nonstop. She teased him for being slow, for being quiet, for being human. "Your bones look like they'll snap if I blow on them," she said once when he passed her the toolbox. She sniffed it, then said, "Smells like sadness and old socks." He didn't respond, but he noticed things. Her hands shook when she thought no one was looking. She flinched at loud sounds, and once when he accidentally dropped a part. She ducked like someone was about to hit her. When lunchtime came, he sat on the bench and offered her a food packet. She rolled her eyes. "Human food? You trying to poison me?" He shrugged and began eating quietly, but out of the corner of his eye, he saw her slowly inch closer. She didn't ask. But when he looked away for a moment, one of his food bars was missing. He didn't say a word. Later, she licked her fingers and said, "Maybe your food isn't completely useless." But he saw it she hadn't eaten all day until now. At sunset, the two of them walked back toward the small bunkhouse. She walked ahead, pretending to lead, tail swaying like she owned the place. But when the wind blew cold, she hugged herself and shivered. Still, she kept talking, loud and proud, like nothing could touch her. He followed behind, quietly thinking, why did someone like her get sent here? She didn't act like a soldier, didn't follow orders, and didn't care for the job. But he also saw the hunger in her eyes, the fear behind the jokes, the pain behind the smirks. Something didn't feel right. He knew alien species had different customs, but this one felt like more than that. This felt like someone trying very hard to hide something deep and painful at the bunkhouse. She threw herself onto the spare bed and groaned. "This place is ugly," she said, "but at least it's not loud." He handed her a clean towel and turned to leave. But before he could go, she called out, "Hey, human," she said softly. "Don't go snooping through my stuff." "Yeah." He looked back at her. She was lying on her side now, facing away, but her voice had changed. Less sharp, less strong. "I don't keep anything worth stealing," she added, almost in a whisper. He nodded once and left the room, in the hallway. He paused, thinking about her words that night, as he lay in his own bed. He couldn't stop thinking. He had seen many species in his life, trained with some, worked beside others. But none of them ever made him feel this strange mix of curiosity and concern. This tiny alien girl was loud and rude and annoying. But underneath all that, something was wrong, deeply wrong. And he was going to find out what, because behind all her teasing and talking, he had seen something else, something silent and broken, and maybe, just maybe, she had come here hoping someone would notice. The next morning, the air on the station felt heavy. The human woke early, as always, and stepped out to the cold. Metal floor of the work bay. He expected silence, but she was already there, sitting on the bench. Arms crossed, staring at a broken bot leg like it owed her something. You sleep standing up, or are you just slow? She asked without looking at him. He didn't reply. Just walked past her and started his task, but he noticed her eyes were red again, like she hadn't slept at all. Today was system testing day: wires, sensors, circuits, and one broken atmosphere. Recycler. The tasks were simple, but required focus. She acted like it was nothing, like she was too good for it. Give me the hard stuff, she said, or I'll fall asleep from boredom. But her hands shook again while fixing a wire panel. She cursed under her breath when her tools slipped. He handed her a grip stabilizer without a word. She took it, then threw him a sharp look. Don't treat me like I'm fragile. I treat tools like tools, he said calmly. She didn't answer, but used the grip anyway. As the hours passed, she worked fast. Sometimes too fast. He saw her rushing, skipping safety steps. When a circuit sparked and burned her glove, she laughed. See? That one was alive, she joked, waving her hand. But he saw the small blister forming and her wince when she turned away. He walked to the cabinet and took out a first aid kit. Sit, he said firmly. She froze, eyes narrowing. I'm fine. She said, don't need pity, but he stood still, holding the bandage. Waiting, after a moment, she sat down with a huff. He cleaned the small wound, wrapped it, and didn't speak. She watched him, quiet now, her usual smirk missing. You? Always this silent? She asked, like ghost silent. He looked at her, then simply said, no one ever listens when I talk. She blinked at that, and for once didn't tease. Instead, she whispered, yeah, I know that feeling. But then she stood up and quickly changed the subject. Bet. I can outfix you, she said, race you to repair the nav drone. He shook his head. We're not racing, she grinned, because you'd lose. Still, she ran to the drone anyway, tail swinging like a flag for the next few hours. They worked side by side. She talked the entire time about space stations she hated, about food she missed, and about a creature called a talloworm that once bit her foot. He didn't laugh, but she didn't seem to care. It was like she just needed to fill the silence so her thoughts couldn't get in. But between the lines of her wild stories, he heard things, small truths hidden in jokes. I once lived in a place where we ate standing up, she said, because sitting meant you stayed too long, or back home. I learned to fix ships by stealing tools first when they stopped for a break. He handed her a water packet. She took it, sipped once, then asked, why do you keep feeding me? He looked at her. Because you're hungry? She frowned, then whispered. No one else ever cared. He didn't know what to say to that. She stood and stretched, showing bruises along her side. She quickly pulled her shirt down when she saw him notice training scars. She said quickly, you should see the other guy. But he didn't believe her. They weren't training bruises. They looked old, deep, and far too many. Something inside him tightened. Who hurt her like this? Later that day, they climbed to the comms tower to fix a broken antenna. She was fast on the ladder, moving like someone who had done it all her life. But halfway up, she froze. Her claws gripped the metal tightly. T climbed up behind her, calm and careful. Look at me, he said. She didn't move. I'm here. Just breathe. He said again, his voice low. After a few seconds, she climbed again. Slowly, this time, at the top, she didn't speak, just worked with quiet focus. When the job was done, they sat together on the edge, watching the stars blink in the sky. Don't tell anyone I froze, she said. They'll say I'm weak. He nodded once. I won't. She looked at him for a long moment, then smiled. But this one was different. Not teasing, not mocking, just tired. Then she whispered, you're not like the others. He didn't know what she meant, but in that quiet moment, above the world, he realized this tiny alien girl wasn't here to train. She was here to survive, and all her teasing, her jokes, her loud mouth, it was all armor. Armor to hide the fact that no one ever protected her. The station was quiet at night. All the machines were shut down, and only the soft hum of the generators filled the air. The stars outside blinked slowly, like tired eyes in the darkness. The human man sat on his bunk, eyes half closed, but sleep wouldn't come. He kept thinking about Hertha, tiny alien girl with sharp words and trembling hands. All day she had acted strong, like nothing could touch her. But he had seen the cracks in her voice, the fear behind her eyes. She wore her strength like armor. But it was thin and tired. A sound made him sit up, a soft noise, like a breath caught in the throat. He waited, listening. There it was again, a muffled cry, low and broken. He stood, bare feet touching the cold floor, and walked toward her room. Her door was slightly open. He hesitated, not wanting to invade her space. But the sound came again, this time a whisper. Not in human language, he gently pushed the door open. The room was dim. Only the moonlight from the small window lit the space. She sat on the floor, knees pulled to her chest, face hidden. Her thin body shook with each breath. She didn't hear him enter. She was speaking in her own language, her voice soft and filled with pain, like she was talking to someone who wasn't there. He stepped forward, slow and careful. Rilke, he said softly. She jumped, eyes wide, breathing fast. Then she wiped her face quickly and looked away. What are you doing here? She snapped, her voice shaky. I heard something, he said. She stood quickly, brushing imaginary dust from her clothes. I'm fine. Go back to sleep, she said, trying to sound annoyed, but her eyes were still wet, and her lips trembled. He didn't move. She looked at him again, her expression tired. I told you not to snoop, she whispered. He sat down on the edge of the bed, silent, waiting. After a long pause, she walked over and sat on the floor again. This time she didn't hide her face. She stared at the wall and spoke in a low voice. Back home, when someone cries, they're sent away. He didn't say anything. She continued, voice flat, you have to be strong, always. Even when you're not, even when it hurts, even when you're scared. She looked at her hands. My claws aren't sharp enough. My tail isn't fast enough. I'm not big, not smart, not chosen. So they put me in this program. She looked up at him. But this program isn't real. It's a way to get rid of us quietly, politely. Her voice cracked, like trash. The human felt a deep anger rise inside him, not at her, but at the ones who did this to her. She wasn't trash. She was scared, alone, and still trying to act strong. I thought if I teased you, you'd stay away, she whispered. I thought if I acted mean, you wouldn't ask questions. She covered her face again. But now I'm tired. So tired. He reached out slowly. Not to touch her, just to offer something, his presence, his silence. I'm not sending you back, he said quietly. She looked up, confused. What? She whispered. You're safe here, he said. I don't care what program sent you. You're staying. If you want to. Tears rolled down her cheeks again. But this time, she didn't hide them. She crawled slowly across the floor and sat beside him. Then she leaned her small head against his arm. Why? She asked, barely a breath. He looked at her and replied simply. Because no one should cry alone. She closed her eyes. Her breathing slowed. The tension in her shoulders softened. In the silence that followed, he sat still, letting her cry. Quietly, not judging her, not rushing her. He didn't speak again. Didn't ask questions. He just stayed. The stars outside kept blinking. The station stayed silent, and for the first time in a long time, she didn't feel like a mistake. She felt Seen not as a problem or a failure or something to throw away, but as a person, a tired, broken, brave person. And when sleep finally took her, it was with her cheek resting on his arm, a tiny alien girl who had teased him all day but cried. Softly in his arms at midnight, the human man didn't sleep that night. He stayed still as the tiny alien girl rested against his arm. Her breathing became slow, her body relaxed, and her face softened. He watched her quietly, thinking about every strange moment since she had arrived. The teasing, the pride, the sharp words, all of it had been a wall. But that wall had cracked last night, and behind it was not a dangerous alien, not a threat. Just a young girl trying to survive in a world that didn't want her. When morning came, she was already awake. She didn't say anything at first. Just stood and walked to the corner of the room. She didn't make eye contact, didn't tease, didn't smile. He stood too, giving her space. "You didn't tell anyone, did you?" she asked after a long silence. He shook his head. She let out a breath, then nodded slowly. "Good," she whispered, "because if they find out, they'll take me." He looked at her with calm eyes. "I said, you're safe," he reminded. Her lip trembled, but she didn't cry this time. "I don't know what safe feels like," she said quietly. They sat on the floor with a simple breakfast between them. He offered her food again, and this time she didn't steal it. She accepted it. For a while they ate in silence, and then she spoke. "I was supposed to die." He didn't move, didn't interrupt. She stared at her hands, the purple lines on her skin glowing faintly. "I come from the Draxon clans. We don't keep the weak," she said. "If a child shows weakness, fear, or doesn't grow fast enough, they're left behind." She looked at him now, her eyes calm but hollow. "I wasn't strong. I wasn't fast. I didn't win my first combat trial, so my name was erased from the clan tree, and my mother." Her voice cracked again. "She gave me one last thing," she continued. "A transport ticket to the human program." Her voice was bitter, not angry, just tired. She said maybe the humans would feed me. Maybe they'd use me for something. But at least I wouldn't die in the cold. The human said nothing. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. Not embarrassed, just exhausted. "I never wanted pity," she said. "So I wore armor made of words." Her voice dropped. "I thought if I pretended to be strong, I could stay invisible. But you saw me," she said, looking up. "Even when I didn't want you to." He gave a slow nod. "You were never invisible," he said, "just trying to survive." She let out a breath that sounded more like a quiet laugh. "I don't know how to be weak," she admitted, "even when I feel broken." He reached forward and gently placed a folded cloth in her hands. "Being honest isn't weakness," he said. "It's the first step to healing." She looked down at the cloth, her eyes filling again. "I used to dream about being part of something," she whispered. "Not a weapon, not a failure, just someone that mattered." She hugged the cloth close to her chest. He stood and walked to the workbench. "Come," he said softly. "Let's fix something today." She blinked, then wiped her face. "Are we pretending nothing happened?" she asked. "No," he said. "We're building from it." That answer made her smile. Just a little, but real. She followed him, and for the first time, she didn't walk ahead with loud steps. She walked beside him, matching his pace. They worked on a damage control core, something small but tricky. She didn't rush, didn't joke. She asked questions, listened, and when she completed her part, she looked at him. Waiting for a nod of approval, he gave it with a quiet, "Good." Her face lit up not with pride, but relief. Like she had passed a test she didn't know it was taking. She didn't speak, but the room felt warmer somehow. Later that day, while repairing a navigation panel, she whispered, "If I fail here, will you send me back?" He looked at her and said, This is not a test, she nodded, holding back tears. For the rest of the evening, she followed him step by step, her movements careful, her voice softer. She wasn't acting strong now, she was just being herself. And that was more powerful than all the armor she had worn before. That night, she didn't cry, but before going to sleep, she stood at his door. "Thank you," she said, voice clear but small, "for letting me speak." He nodded. "You can speak any time," he said. She smiled once more, this time with something close to peace. Then she walked away. Her steps light and quiet like a breeze. The night air inside the station was cold. The human man moved through the quiet hallway with a warm blanket in his arms. He had seen how she curled up at night, arms wrapped tight around herself, even when she pretended to be strong. Her body showed the truth. He knocked softly on her door. No answer, but he knew she was awake. He opened the door slightly and saw her sitting on the floor again. Her knees were pulled to her chest, her eyes open and still. She didn't look up, just whispered, "What is it now?" He walked over and placed the folded blanket beside her. "You were shaking last night," he said. "This might help." She stared at the cloth like it was a weapon. "Why do you keep giving me things?" she asked quietly. "Because you don't take them unless you need them," he said. For a long moment, she didn't move. Then, slowly, she reached out and touched the blanket. Her fingers ran over the soft fabric. It was nothing special, just an old earth blanket with faded threads, but to her, it looked like a memory from a world she never had. She held it close and whispered, "No one ever gave me comfort before." The human sat beside her on the floor, silent. He didn't speak much, and she seemed to like that now. Silence was safer than words sometimes, especially for those who had been hurt by too many of them. "I used to cry alone in the cold," she said softly. "Where I came from, you learn not to make a sound if someone hears you. They tell the elders, and the elders fix it by making you disappear." She wasn't looking at him, but her voice was steady. "I learned to stay quiet, to look strong, to make jokes, because crying got you erased." She pulled the blanket tighter. "But last night, you didn't erase me," she said. "You didn't even laugh." He turned his head toward her. "Crying isn't shameful," he said. "It means something inside you is still alive." She blinked quickly and looked away. "Then why does it hurt so much?" she asked. "Because you've been holding it in for too long," he replied. Her lips pressed together as she nodded slowly. They sat together for a while. No words, just breath and warmth. Then she leaned against him, gently, not with weight, but with trust. "I never meant to be cruel to you," she whispered. "I just didn't know if you'd hurt me too." He nodded once. "I understand," he said. The blanket shifted as she moved closer, not to hide, but to feel something safe. "I used to think humans were weak," she said. "Too soft, too gentle. Always talking about kindness." She gave a short breath, something between a laugh and a sigh. "But now I think softness isn't weakness." He looked down at her, her glowing eyes half closed. "It's harder to be kind when the world hasn't been kind to you," he said. "That's true strength." She didn't answer, but her breathing slowed. In a few minutes, she had fallen asleep against his side. He didn't move, just watched the stars outside the window. The station was still, the night quiet. And for once, she wasn't alone. In the morning, she woke with the blanket wrapped around her. She blinked up at him and gave a small smile. "I didn't mean to fall asleep on you," Ashay said. "You needed rest," he replied. Your body knew it, for the first time since she arrived. She didn't rush to get up. She stretched, yawned like a kitten, and looked peaceful. "Do you think I can really stay here?" she asked. "I don't think," he said. "I know." She gave him a look, searching for doubt in his words, but there was none. "Okay," she whispered. Then I'll try to believe it too. And with that, she stood, ready to face the day differently. As they worked together, her teasing returned, but now it was softer. She called his hands clumsy, but helped guide them with her smaller ones. She rolled her eyes when he made mistakes, but laughed kindly instead of mocking. Something inside her had shifted. She asked questions, now not to challenge, but to learn. She watched him carefully, trying to copy the way he worked. And when he praised her, even with a single word like good, she lit up like a sunrise. When they took a short break, she sat beside him instead of across. "Tell me a story from Earth," she asked. He blinked, surprised. "You never asked before," he said. "I didn't care before," she replied. "But now, I want to hear what home sounds like." So he told her about the sound of trees, the feeling of rain, and the smell of fresh soil. She listened with wide eyes, hugging the blanket like it was part of the story, and for the first time, she didn't look like a stranger, she looked like someone finding home. The day began like any other on the station, quiet, slow, filled with small repairs and routine checks. The human man and the tiny alien girl worked side by side. She didn't tease as much, now she asked more questions, learned faster, and smiled more often, but something felt off in the air. The human sensed it before he heard anything. Then came the sharp buzz of the outer gate alarm. Someone had arrived, unexpected and unannounced. The girl froze, tool in hand, her eyes wide and alert. He looked at her, and she whispered, "I know that sound." She dropped the tool and backed away from the workbench. "Please," she said, her voice trembling, "don't let them take me." He didn't ask questions, he just moved. He walked to the main panel and checked the screen. 3 military officers stood outside the gate, armored and expressionless. He pressed the come button. "State your purpose." "This is a routine inspection," the lead officer said. "We're collecting all trainees for reassignment review." The human frowned. No notice was given. Orders from above came the cold reply. "We have full clearance." The girl was already backing toward the hallway. She looked smaller now, her strong face gone pale. "They'll take me back," she whispered. "They'll erase me." He turned to her, his voice firm. "You're not going anywhere." But she shook her head. "You don't understand. If they say I'm unfit, they won't send me home. They'll report me as expired." Her hands trembled, but her voice grew sharper. "They don't allow weakness." He could see it clearly. Now this wasn't about reassignment. It was about removal, quiet and clean. They had come not to inspect, but to erase. And she knew it, because she had seen it happen before. The door opened with a hiss. The 3 officers walked in. Scanning the area like machines, the lead officer looked at the girl and said, "Trainee Rilke, come forward." She didn't move. The human stepped between them. "She is under my care," he said, calm but firm. "She has completed every task, learned quickly, and caused no harm." "She is being recalled," the officer replied. "Your opinion is not required." The girl clenched her fists, her body shaking. For a moment, it looked like she might run. But then she stepped forward, not to surrender, but to speak. Her voice was loud and steady. "No," she said, "I will not go." The officers turned to her. Surprised, she walked beside the human, standing tall, though she was small. "I've worked hard. I've earned my place." She said, "I was sent here to disappear." She continued, "But this human saw me, trained me, believed in me." She looked up at the man beside her, her voice softer now. "He didn't treat me like a weapon or a burden." She turned back to the officers, "And I won't let you take that away." One of the officers stepped forward. "You are disobeying direct orders." "Then mark me disobedient." She snapped, "But I am not leaving." The lead officer paused, then pulled out a datapad. "Your file says you failed 2 trials, showed emotional instability, and refused correction. Your file says you are unfit. She took a step forward. Your file is wrong. She held up a small data chip. This contains my work logs from this station daily repairs. Test results, full video logs. She placed it on the table. If you want proof, here it is. The officers looked at each other, unsure. The human added, if you take her now, I will report this entire event to Central Command. She has rights under the new protection clause. The lead officer scowled, but said nothing. Finally, he picked up the chip, looked at the girl, and said, we'll review this, without another word. The officers turned and left the station. The moment the door hissed shut, the girl dropped to her knees. She covered her face, her whole body shaking, not from fear, but release. They're gone, she whispered. I thought I'd have to run again. The human knelt beside her, placing a hand gently on her back. You stood up for yourself, he said. That's not weakness. She looked at him, tears in her eyes. I didn't do it just for me, she said. I did it because you believed I could, for a moment. They just breathed together. Then she smiled through her tears. Did I look brave? She asked. You looked strong, he replied, and this time her smile stayed. Because for the first time in her life, she had stood her ground. Not alone, but beside someone who saw her worth. And that kind of strength, she knew, would never fade. Midnight returned, just like before. But this time, the silence was peaceful, not heavy. The human man sat outside on the bench near the station wall. Above him, the stars blinked slowly, like tiny lanterns across the dark sky. He heard footsteps. Behind him, light and careful. He didn't turn, he knew who it was. The tiny alien girl walked over, wearing the same blanket he had given her days ago. She sat beside him without saying a word at first. The cold wind touched their faces, but neither moved. The sky was wide and endless, but the moment felt small and warm. Finally, she spoke, her voice soft like the breeze. You know, she said, I used to hate silence. He glanced at her, then looked back up. It reminded me of being forgotten, she continued. When no one speaks to you, you start to feel like you don't exist. But now, she paused. This silence feels different. He nodded slowly. It's not empty anymore, he said. She smiled, wrapping the blanket tighter around her shoulders. I never thought I'd be here, she whispered. Not just alive, but okay. The stars reflected in her eyes, glowing gently for the first time. I'm not pretending, she said. I'm not teasing because I'm scared. Not talking to cover my pain. She leaned her head on his shoulder. You made me feel real, she added, like I belong somewhere. He didn't speak right away, but he placed his hand gently over hers. She didn't pull away this time, back inside the station. Everything was calm. The alarms were off. The lights dimmed, the machines resting, but outside, something stronger was happening. Something quiet, yet full of meaning. Trust, once broken, was being rebuilt. Do you think I'll always be this small? She asked with a quiet laugh. He looked at her and said, small things often carry great strength. She smiled wider. You sound like one of those human storybooks. He chuckled under his breath. Maybe I read too many. They both laughed, light and easy. No weight in her words now. No fear hidden behind the humor. Just two people, different species, sitting side by side, not enemies. Not strangers, just companions under the stars. She shifted slightly and looked at him. Do you think they'll come back? She asked. They might, he replied, but if they do, we'll face them together. Her eyes softened. Together, she repeated. For a long moment, they said nothing more. Just breathed the cold air, felt the stillness, and let their thoughts rest. Then she whispered, back home, I used to dream of a night like this, where no one was chasing me, and I didn't have to hide who I was. He looked at her with calm eyes. You never have to hide here, he said. You are not a mistake, not a problem to be fixed. You are Rilke. She blinked slowly, her lips parting just a little. No one had ever said her name like that before, like it meant something. She sat up straight, holding the blanket close, and for the first time, she believed it. They stayed out there until the sky began to lighten just slightly. The first signs of false dawn painting soft blue across the darkness. She yawned, stretching like a cat, then looked at him with a sleepy smile. "I'm glad you're quiet," she said. "I think your silence saved me." He smiled faintly. "And your noise saved me." She laughed gently. "Guess we make a strange team, strange works," he replied, as they stood to go back inside. She stopped for a moment at the door. She turned toward him, eyes serious. "You know what I want now." He waited, curious. "I want to stay," she said. "Not just here on the station, but here with you." He nodded slowly. "You already are." She smiled, tired but content. "I never belonged anywhere before." She whispered, "But tonight I fell asleep without fear, and when I wake up, I want that feeling again." The station door slid open with a soft hiss. They stepped inside together, not as mechanic and trainee, not as human and alien, but as two souls who found peace in the same quiet night. And though the stars still watched from above, they were no longer far, no longer cold, because in that small station, on that distant edge of the galaxy, one tiny alien girl had finally found what she thought she'd never have: home.